To the graduates, congratulations. A few parting thoughts. Today I'd like to share with you a word my wife found in an article written by a Swedish author. And it's interesting, its origins are Spanish. And I'd like to ask the group, how many people here are Spanish native speakers? Could you just raise your hand? Your parents over there? Everybody? Okay. Are you familiar with the word duende? Duende. A few of you, right? Yes, okay, I see a hand waving over there. Well, Wikipedia describes it as the most difficult word in Spanish to translate into English. Pronounced duende in Spanish, I hope I did that right, and in English, duenti. The definition is a heightened state of emotion, often connected to flamenco. So when you see a performance that's full of passion, it's that feeling you get by connecting to the dancers and to the music. Duende describes the sensation one gets when moved by experiencing an evocative performance or seeing extraordinary art. It's a physical, emotional response to art. Duende is not a learned response. And here are some descriptions, because as I looked for a clear definition, I just kept getting different reactions to that. So some of them are, it gives me chills, or of the primal blood, emotional darkness, a power everyone can feel but no one can explain. All the arts are capable of duende, but music sung or played or spoken poetry have the most direct reaction, because a person must bring the concept to life. So in the immediate singing or speaking, the emotion is transferred directly. And so it's much more easy to experience this duende feeling. So what does this have to do with graduation? Well, I hope I'm going to explain that. For me, a great deal. Have any of you ever experienced something like this, duende? Raise of hands. Standing in front of, wow, look at that. Pretty much everybody in the room. So you know what it is, but you just missed the word for it. At least I did. Now that I have this word, I can sort of hold on to it. It's a concept. As I was preparing my talk, I asked friends and family if they had ever experienced duende, and to my surprise, some hadn't. Interesting. Those of you that experienced duende, please try now to recall what that experience was. The moment it happened, the sensation, the feeling that you got when that happened to you. It's a special experience, often unforgettable. I'd like to share 3 personal experiences with you today. The first one, I was quite young, probably 14 or 15, and my parents, we lived in upstate New York, in the boonies, and we were taking a cultural trip to Washington, D.C. And we had a whole schedule of museums to see, and I think we were in the National Gallery, and I was trying to get away from them probably, and just walked off on my own and found myself in a room with a Rembrandt self-portrait. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know what the painting was about. It's the one with the beret and the upturned collar, 1650. I was looking at this painting, and I was realizing I was getting a strange sensation. It was almost like he was speaking to me, but I couldn't figure it out. It was like I didn't have a vocabulary for the feelings I felt. It was just captivating. This man was looking at me. I was looking back, and something was happening. I couldn't really understand it. And so I walked away, and after a few minutes, and I was very much moved by that experience. And I thought, well, I should share that with my parents, but then what would I say? Mom, I was looking at a painting and I got a weird feeling. Well, I was already in therapy, so I didn't think that was a good idea. So, no, I wasn't, but. And so years passed, and a few times, in my 20s and early 30s, I experienced things in music that really moved me. But it wasn't until 1981, here in Florence, I was 32 years old, and a friend of mine, a colleague, came by the studio and said, oh, there's this great show going on. It's closing today. I've already seen it. I want to go back. Come with me. And I thought, okay, what's the show? He says, the Riachi bronzes. They've been restored. They're on view. And I thought, well, I saw the posters. I'm just not really into it. I don't get it. These green, dark, bearded guys. I'm a painter. And so I said, no. And he insisted. And so I eventually went. So bought the ticket, walked through the entranceway into a dark room, no windows, only spotlights from the ceiling, shining down on these two warrior figures, warrior A and B, that's what they're called. 1.90 meters tall, standing in a room about this far off the ground. The pedestal was about maybe 1 meter, 1.20 meters. And as I walked toward them, I started to feel really strange. An emotional flood came over me. It was like nothing I'd ever experienced before. I was looking at something so beautiful and so moving that I didn't know how to react to it. It's like the Stendhal syndrome, but in a microscopic way. It was life-changing. I didn't realize that women could make something that beautiful and have it affect me so deeply. The third experience I would like to share with you now, presently, now. And this is roughly about a 4-minute aria from a Puccini opera called Tosca, and sung by Maria Callas. Many of you, I'm sure, have heard this, so just bear with me. The aria is Vici di Arte, and translated it means, I live for art, I live for love, I never harmed a living soul. With a discreet hand, I relieved all the misfortunes I encountered, always with true faith. Now, those are the opening lines, and it goes on and on. But what she's singing about is the fact that her lover has been captured by this Scampia guy who's going to execute him if she doesn't sleep with him. So she's calling out and saying, why was I dealt this miserable hand? Why am I in this situation? And she is communicating that to all of us. I'm sorry for all of you who are not opera people. Bear with me for 4 minutes. I'm hoping you all have some reaction to that music. I guess if you don't feel something, I suggest checking your pulse, because you're probably not with us. Maria Callas can make us feel her heartache and her pain as if it was ours. And I think that's the extraordinary thing about art. What it can do is you can enter into their world and really participate. I listened to half a dozen different performances of the same aria, and they were technically so much better because they were more recent and the soundtrack was great. This is the garbled old soundtrack, and it just, every time I hear it, I just am moved by it. Duende is the awe we feel looking at stained glass windows in Notre Dame, or being overwhelmed by the perfection of a painting by Raphael, or brought to tears while reading a sonnet by Shakespeare, or when your knees get weak when you're looking at a Pietà by Michelangelo, or mesmerized by a small drapery study by Leonardo da Vinci. To engage with art transports us. Great art shows us the best of who we are and who we can be. It's rather the intended response, deliberately created by the artist or artists. This is the challenge, graduates and all artists. How do we do this? And how do we make this happen? I'm very sure there's no book, there's no formula, there's no technique, nothing that will help you achieve this. What moves one of us to tears may have little significance to someone else. So therefore, where does this come from? And why does it touch so many people? Therefore, it's ultimately the artist's own life's experience that must be conjured up and with mastery of technique, put forth in voice, paint, stone, word, whatever the medium. I believe Duende is achieved by living deeply, passionately, striving to understand the emotional world as we study the rational one, and nurturing humanity, connecting us with others, the whole world. After all art is just a way of looking at ourselves through the filter of an artist. For the artist, it's the record of their journey. The beauty, depth, meaning, what we make is limited to ourselves, who we truly are and what we are capable of doing. Great art is created by great people. There are no exceptions. Artists are not copy machines mimicking the world around us. Those who would share so little of themselves will receive the same in return. Remember that. Give everything you have, and it will be returned many times over. And lastly, please keep this thought with you as you paint, sculpt, or draw. All great artists started out as students. What distinguishes them from all the others is Duende. Thank you.